This conference will now be recorded.
Cool. So, how is
What's
everyone? Cool. What's up, Jason? That entrance was priceless. It was like, yeah.
living the dream, man? Living the dream.
Awesome. I saw your interview with Alex or whoever, so that was
Yeah,
pretty cool.
that was pretty interesting.
Yeah. So cool.
Well, I
All
missed
right.
that.
Yeah, it's on YouTube somewhere. Somebody put a link in there. So
There's a link global page, and plus you can find it on their site.
yeah. All right. Well, so I have a topic for today, but it looks like we might have some people in here that might want to ask questions, which is what this is kind of for. So let's see what's up with that first. Oh, the introductions, I suppose, are in order. I'm Brian. I'm with Thunder Laser, and I'll let Loco CeeLo introduce himself.
I'm I'm Chris, also with Thunder Laser.
And the other Chris is also here with Thunder Laser.
What's up, guys?
And of course, Rotoboss is our preferred vendor for our rotaries, so he's sitting in today too. Um, originally, this was made, for prospective clients and new clients and stuff like that to come in and ask questions about their machine, and we've been tinkering with that back and forth and changing times. So that's gonna continue to evolve. But let's see. First of all, if anyone is new on here and has any questions, or even if you're not, has any questions or issues or anything like that with the machine or that kind of thing, and let's just kind of open up the floor for some Q&A for a minute, if we could. And if anybody has anything, feel free to kick your mic on and go for it. Okay, Jim. Anybody? All right. So, Chris is. Do you have anything?
No, I got dinner.
You got dinner?
Got lots of stuff I
Yeah.
can't share here.
Yeah. So,
I'm eating a cupcake.
all right. Well, so my topic today that I thought of was the art of the cut. What do you think about that? Like, talk about focus, talk about thickness, talk about what the substrate is and how different air is when you're doing acrylic as opposed to doing MDF or some engineered lumber or something like that. Because there's a lot of caveats and a lot of uh, things that are particular about each one. So that's kind of what I came up with. I know I didn't put it on the list. I don't know if Jim's been checking my homework on the page. You been checking my homework, Jim?
No, Jim's been like beyond too busy to
That's a
even.
good thing.
Yeah, it's not just work; it's everything else.
Yeah. Um, so I mean, we can bounce that around. If at any time anybody has any questions or anything pops up, you know, um, then we can shift gears. We're pretty fluid. This ends up in all kinds of places by the end of the session sometimes. So
I will say
um,
that I was trying to cut some cherry, just a small sign, and I don't know what the thickness was, somewhere between 3/4 and 7/8. And at 3 passes on a 2-inch lens, focused way into it, I couldn't get through the whole thing. It just shows you. I mean, 90% of it cut perfectly fine. But there was hard spots in that cherry that obviously wasn't letting me blast through. That just goes to show you that every single
even
piece of wood is never going to be the same no matter what.
yeah,
And even if it's not plywood, with glue pockets, you're going to get hard sides even with cherry blasting through it.
What wattage is your machine?
80. I was running at 1090.
external air.
Yep.
So what you may want to try, crank that speed down to 3. Try to do it
I
in
was
one pass if you can.
I was going to say I could have backed the speed down, but I was
Mm-hmm.
playing and I was just trying to prove a point.
Yeah.
So
Kind of with Brian's anatomy of a cut, in general, yes, you have the opportunity to do multiple passes, step downs per pass, but if you can do it in one pass, that gives somewhere for the air to go versus it just bouncing back and stuff going everywhere.
Yeah, and there's a lot more char, and it burns a lot more of the area on the way because it just doesn't evacuate that stuff fast enough.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I
that's
always like to try to get in one pass, but I understand where you're going, and sometimes I've encountered. Well, I cut through that pressure treated 2 by that time, but that took a bunch of passes, and that was nasty. It ended up looking like I, you know, burned it out with a torch.
well, the look I
Yeah.
was going for on the edge of the cherry was actually the charred look. So I was deliberately going for that
Gotcha.
burnt look on the edge of the cherry, more of a rustic type scenario. So I was deliberately doing it, but I was sort of shocked, and I knew I should have backed it down from 10 to probably 5, and I probably would have been fine. But I was trying to hurry it up, and even at 1090, but it blew through majority of it. Like I said, 90% of it. But you have this harder densities of the wood, the substrate, that all of a sudden doesn't want to. It absorbs it and doesn't let you blast through it.
And that's a good point though, because I already know in my head that engineered woods things happen in there. The stuff we're all familiar with. But in my mind, and my dad works exclusively with natural wood. I was kind of under the same impression. It's natural wood. Those impurities or imperfections aren't there. But I guess everything really is different even on that stuff because I haven't worked with a lot of it either. I don't work with a lot of
Well,
stuff.
with a tree, you'll find out if a tree, depending on how the tree is sitting in the environment, you've got wind constantly typically hitting from one side, and or if that tree stresses and goes twisted as it gets matured, that wood fiber compresses, which creates a stronger, a thicker fiber than the softer parts of the wood. And that's literally what happens. You just basically have stress in the wood. That's how you get your warps and your twists and all that stuff. Is just different stresses in natural wood.
Now, could you identify the areas before you lifted out of the machine that didn't cut?
I had suspicion.
No, I was like, like when I do pine and there's knots, you can use that feature in Lightburn to rewind it and basically do a start from and try to focus on just where the knot is, so you're not sitting there waiting for it to go the whole border again.
Yeah,
If you can plan it. Yeah.
Yeah, because generally, if you watch the smoke, if you don't see
Yep.
smoke, you're typically burning through. If you've got smoke repelling, you're typically not burned through. But two, if you sort of stand off the side of your laser, another little trick you can do is sort of stand off at an angle at your laser and look at the crumb tray, and you can see the refractions of the light once as it hits the. If you're using the honeycomb, the flashes or the red laser dot, you can see it hit the crumb tray, and it'll let you know if you're blasting through or not.
Yeah. No smoke is a good thing. That means everything's doing it's getting through there and going where it's supposed to.
Now, the only thing that will fool you is oak, because oak is basically, it looks like on the end of oak, it looks like a bunch of straws compressed together. You can actually blow through oak. So a lot of times you think you're cut through oak because you're not seeing smoke. Well, the smoke's actually coming out the two ends of the board because the smokes are actually riding those pores basically and running out the sides. So you think you're cut through, but you're not. It actually will trick you.
Cool. And then of course acrylics are totally different. On wood or any of those kinds of things, organics, most of them, you want, if you're cutting through in one pass, you want as much air as you want as you can possibly get to it, and have the nozzle as close, as feasible, so that you direct that air into the cut more. But acrylic is a totally different animal. You're walking a real fine line between starting a fire and not starting a fire. Because if you lay it right on the honeycomb, then some of those unburned gases, kind of cavitate there. They kind of just hover it, they get in those pockets of the honeycomb, and then it can flash. You notice, you've probably seen it. Are you all just exclusively wood, Jim? Have you cut any composites or acrylics?
Yeah, I've done both.
Okay. Yeah. But so you know what I'm talking about, standing them off helps, get some airflow under it so that you can
also helps to get rid of those
steam
white pockets that you'll get underneath the bottom where all the gas is trapped on the bottom of your acrylic, because you can get those white spots, or whatever you want to call them, cloudiness around your cut, because the gases are basically trapped there.
Somebody's done a video somewhere of that showing that lingering.
Oh, it's that
So
guy from overseas.
yeah, somebody's got a video. He's
Who's
like he's like a German fella or something like that overseas.
Brian? You talk about him a lot. Who's that guy that's over in England?
Russ.
Oh, yeah, Russ Sadler.
Yeah, Russ. He's the one that did it.
Yeah, I think this is one of the things. He's got a lot of cool videos. Does some but talks about the stuff.
You talk about deep
lingering.
dives. He'll deep
Yeah.
dive, and I like it. So, but yeah, so that's just some of the things. Hey, John, how you doing, man? We can put you on the spot, can't we? Do you have any questions or anything? You want to say hi?
I do have a question.
Okay.
So we talked about the air, and you said going into the board and setting it to where the air will cut off instead of running so long. And I've tried to do that, but every time it just goes back to the same time. Is there a way to once you change the time to enter it where it remembers it, or?
As far as I can tell on the TL timer boards, once you get it set, it should stick.
I've tried it several times, and when I turn it off or whatever, next time I go back into it, it's right back to where it was at.
And then they stay on again.
I'm missing a step.
Well, I've got a couple of machines here. I can run through the process and actually change the times, and see how I go through it. And make sure that they correspond on both machines. And I can get back with you and provide some instruction. Make sure that there's not some way to lock it in. I haven't messed with them. I've cycled the channels, but I haven't changed times on a TL timer board physically, and I want to do that so I have a feel of what's going on.
I've changed it 2 or 3 times, and it just goes right back, So it'll work until I turn the machine off and back on, and it resets. So I figured I'm missing something.
Yeah, that's kind of strange. We might start a ticket on that if that's all right, and that way we can kind of dig into that.
Well, it ain't nothing, real important, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, if it's not behaving like we think it ought to behave, we definitely don't. We want to dig in a little bit and poke around and see what's going on for sure. Just make sure everything's cool. That's what we do.
all right.
So
We're
that's
good
too
then.
bad. Tommy,
Can you
what
send a
was I on?
picture
I know they have done it.
of your TL timer board? What version it is?
I can.
Yep. It'll be a little tiny text, but 8.4, 8.3, something in that range.
Yeah, I hadn't seen
And do it.
before, so I've got a picture of it. Unless I've deleted it, I've already got a picture
If
of
you
it. So,
if it's already in the ticket system, we can go back and look at it.
Yeah.
If you have
And we-
taken one and sent it to us before, yeah, we can go back and find it. I'll go back in there and look in the meantime. If you've
And you
got
would
to dig,
also have to cycle and reset the board as well to lock it in. Like you can't just leave it there; it'll probably erase it.
yeah, it's a version 8.3,
okay.
but you've got a picture of it I sent to you.
Okay. Yeah. I'll tell you what, we'll just pick up in the same ticket that we had going since it's related to the same thing. But, we might pop you a video or some instruction or a couple of more questions, to make sure that the board's functioning the way it ought to, because it should do what we think it ought to do. And if it isn't, then I definitely don't want to just say, oh, well, that's weird. I want to know why.
I'm tracking cut and keep moving
Sure.
on. And the only other problem I've had is I've had the machine over a year now, and I finally had to adjust from Mira 2 to the head. And I'll get that set, and then a day or two later, it's out again. I don't know why. What's causing that?
Okay.
I thought I was over tightening the little lockdown screws.
Uh-huh.
I was real careful with them, and I watched it, and it's dead on. And then in a couple of days, it'll be out a little bit again. And the whole thing it's doing is I'm having to use more power to cut
I see.
out, so I can tell when it's getting out of alignment.
Yeah.
Now, do you tighten those 3 brass rings before you tighten the silver screws?
Yeah, and then the silver screws is what I was afraid I was tightening too tight because I could see it actually move.
Yeah. Those are just to snug it and keep it from vibrating loose. The silver ones don't get hardly anything at all on them. Otherwise, you'll knock it out of whack. But That's for something to change periodically. That would indicate something either not square, maybe something loose, like a mount or one of the rings that secure an optic or something like that.
The head feels like it's just mutely, just barely loose a little bit. I can
You
turn
do
the
your
rotor that runs on the rod, I can turn it with my hand now.
yeah, probably do your bearing check.
And we've got some videos on that I can send you. I found where we were talking about your air assist, and you've got 2 tickets total, and I found one, so we'll pick back up, and I'll give you a little short video, an article on checking those bearing tensions and getting those right, just to eliminate that as a part of the equation.
I'm afraid I'd get further out of whack.
Yeah. This shouldn't get you any further out of whack. Just getting a little bit of tension on those, just cranking those eccentric cams just a little bit. Should take care of that,
Chris, you're in Knoxville, aren't you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm just probably 45 minutes south of there.
What part?
Iowa?
Yeah, I've been down there.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah,
We
that's not
just
too
about
far at
there.
all. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I'm actually in the Farragut area, so even closer than Knoxville proper.
Oh yeah. I go to Farragut a lot.
I'm not too terribly far away either. Murfreesboro, geographic center of Tennessee. So
that's where I go to the BA hospital.
Okay. Yeah.
Just when I have to, though.
Right.
All right. Well, that's all I had.
Okay. Yeah, we'll follow up on that stuff because there's a couple of things that we can send you that we can walk through, and I just want to double check, make sure everything's good.
Okay.
So,
all right. Appreciate it.
absolutely.
I guess our next thing would be talking about cutting woods and stuff. Is basically you're focusing into the wood and using that method.
Yeah.
So where you get more power going inwards.
Right. So basically on all of these heads, when we talk about on the 2-inch head, 6 millimeters focus or autofocus, for instance, that's a nominal focal range, but that's to get the focus at the surface of the material. And from what I've seen from other people in my own experiences, which is not that much, but anything, 1/4 inch and less, I autofocus. I don't even worry about focusing into the center typically, for ply and stuff like that. It's faster just to blow and go with it if you're just cutting stuff out. But especially, 3/8, half inch for sure, on my 2-inch lens, I'll focus 1 millimeter away, and that puts me 5 millimeters into the center, which is a millimeter away from halfway. And it also brings the nozzle within 1 millimeter of the substrate so that the air assist has a lot more air going into the kerf instead of kind of being, going to the side as it expands coming out of the nozzle. So both of those things are important, especially with thicker stuff. And there's a video on our site under the basics of focus. I guess we could put some links in the chat. Let me open.
Yeah.
Every time I open a page, my face goes pasty. So I've been trying to keep the internet closed so that I don't blind everybody.
Going to suggest about putting your pictures up of the beam length of the 2-inch, the 4-inch, the reason why you would focus into the wood.
What was that?
I said your pictures that you've got of the beam length, the flattest spot of the beam, and the reasons why you would focus into the wood between the 2-inch and the 4-inch.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about. It's got them all side by side.
Yes.
Let me see. Yeah, let me just share the screen for a minute. That might be easier than sending links, and then it'll be captured forever on YouTube. Let me let this thing. I'm gonna have to adjust my gain.
Need to get you a ring light.
Yeah, I need to. I like it dark in here. So screen 3, I think, is correct.
What makes you think Brian doesn't already have one with his TikTok account?
I left it alone.
Let me find the screen.
Photonics. The inch and a half is what I use, but it just seems like it does so much better for me. The inch and a half.
Mm-hmm. Now, Yeah, I think I got the right screen up. So that's lenses and optics. I think is where one place where that picture is. Talking about this one.
Yeah, so that way you could explain why you're focusing in.
Yeah, yeah. So the focal range, when we talk about a 4-inch lens, it's the distance between the lens and the uh, focal point of the beam. And in this case, it's 4 inches away from the lens. This is a 2.5-inch lens. This is a 2. This is the stock lens that comes with it. So the reason they have more, there's more tolerance on the 4-inch lens. You can cut through thicker materials. One reason is because you have a lot more distance. Like on the 4-inch head that we have, it's 10 millimeters is the focus to the surface. But if you want to focus into the material, you don't always put that at 10 millimeters. You're going to try to get this part of the beam in the center of the material instead of focusing on the surface. So the smaller the lens, or the shorter the focal length, the higher the density of the beam is going to be. Because, for instance, if you run each one of these lenses on an 80-watt machine, uh, the beams, the spot size on this one is considerably larger than the spot size on a 2-inch. And so you're burning twice the material, your dot's twice as big, even perfectly focused. So you have to take that into account, the beam density. So a 4-inch lens will actually make your 80-watt machine cut less efficiently than you would with a 2-inch, if that makes sense, because of the beam density. Did that make any sense?
Yeah.
Yes, the main advantage of going with the 4-inch over the 2 inches is getting straighter sidewalls.
Yeah, yeah. There's less taper. So there are definitely some benefits to the 4-inch, even though theoretically it doesn't cut as efficiently if that's all you're looking at, you know. But yeah, there's a lot more tolerance. The focus doesn't have to be as tight, so it's even good, even though it's not designed for engraving. People are finding that doing whiskey staves or curved things and stuff like that that doesn't have a lot of intricate detail. If it's just normal text and that kind of thing, you can use the 4-inch to engrave that. It saves time. It allows you to engrave down in things without having the head contact the material. All kinds of little tricks with that one. And there's a lot of talk about the high res lens is for engraving only, but you could cut something really thick like Mylar or something with it. It's just not very forgiving, and the head would have to be so close. I think it would gum up pretty quick. Would be a thing with that. So the lens matters, the air assist matters, the focus matters, all of that matters in a cut. So, Loco, CeeLo, you got anything?
The air assist is huge on the acrylic, like you said. I mean, if you want that nice polished finish, turn that down. And it is a balance between fire and perfect cut.
Matter of fact, let me pull that back up. I've got that article about the frosty acrylic, and it shows how air can negatively affect and positively affect that acrylic.
Yeah, because most of the time we're telling people when you're cutting, turn that air up, but exactly the opposite with acrylic. You want it to sit a little bit longer with a little bit more heat and get that nice shine to it.
Yeah, that flame polished edge. So, and I think we brought this one up before. I think that's right. Yeah, and of course that's sitting on edge, but I adjusted it. So this is 1/2 inch acrylic, I think, or is it 3/4? It's 3/4 cast acrylic. And over here on the bottom where it looks like a baby's been chewing on it, that's the flashback from the honeycomb, which can be indicative of too much power. Because theoretically, if you only use as much power as you need to cut through the substrate, there's not much left over to reflect. But we all know that's not always feasible. The reason it looks so cloudy up on top is because they had the air assist turned on at very high volume, and when these striations, these diagonal striations you see, are actually from the blade of a table saw on the other face, the factory edge of this acrylic. We're being able to see it all the way through because it's transparent. So that's what we're seeing here. But here on top, it's really chalky and rough, and that's because the air was blowing in there so much. It was solidifying the acrylic before it could all melt back together and get this nice, smooth, flame polished edge. The reason it's better down low is because this junk occluded the air so much that the air was reduced from here down, and it gave a better result in output. So this where you can see all the way through is a result of not having much air, which is what you want to get that nice edge. So, and I can link that article in the chat again, just in case. And hey, Arthur, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, Brian. Got a little bit of a dilemma. I was hoping maybe you could help me out with.
Well, come on with it. What you got?
Okay. Well, pardon me for being a little bit convoluted here, but I am in need of moving my Nova 51 to a different part of my shop. And I'm a little bit short on the wire. So I did a little investigating. I found on the forum somebody else had posted a similar question, and I found your extension cord answer, which was that Yellow Jacket 20 amp, I think it was a 10 gauge cord. So I'm looking at that, and I'm realizing that the female end of that cord has the T-slot style. And I noticed when I don't know if you remember, I bought this machine from one of our forum members, and he dropped it off. We put it into place, plugged it in. I never looked at it until now, and I see that it's got a standard type plug, and it looks as if there's no grommet or anything coming out the back of the machine. It looks as if this was something that he might have added on to the machine, and he might have swapped something out or changed it, because it's like wired by. Looks like it's wired by hand.
Okay, well, that might have been a replacement, but that vintage machine, that I believe if we find the date code on it, it's going to be before we started putting the 20 amp plugs on the machines. See, before a couple of years ago, all of the machines came with 15 amp cords, even the 130 watt machines, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. You see what I mean?
Right.
We would still tell them to get a 20 amp outlet, because those will plug in a 20 amp or a 15 amp. See what I mean? The real trick was making sure that they had the proper outlet for it with the proper current. The reason they started keying them differently is so that people could not plug them into 15 amp outlets anymore, to prevent somebody from using a standard outlet, so that they have to know that they need that dedicated 20. So what I'm saying is if you have a 20, if your laser was on a 20 amp outlet, you know, like prescribed, then that extension cord will be fine as long as it'll plug in.
Yeah, well, okay, so that's one of the issues. I'm certain that I have a 20 amp breaker in my fuse box for this particular outlet in my garage. However, it's got a standard plug. It doesn't have the T-style, receptacle.
Let me pull up some visuals so we can make sure we're on the same page.
Well, the biggest thing is you're looking at a standard outlet, and the thing is, even if it's on a 20 amp breaker, is it on a 20 amp dedicated breaker? That's the significance of the whole thing. It needs to be on a dedicated 20 amp breaker.
That, and there's more. If you're using 14 gauge wire instead of 12, that's a problem.
But I'm saying, if he was already on a 20 amp, though, he was saying it was 20 amp, it was done properly.
Some people, when you put in a 20, you can put in a 20 and put two 15 amp standards on it instead of one 20 amp NEMA 520, right? You could another configuration when people request a dedicated 20 amp outlet is actually two NEMA 515 outlets. You see what I mean?
I think that's what I've got.
That doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong. It just means that it's a different configuration than the one that we sometimes talk about.
Right. I've got a box that's got 4 receptacles. And it's connected to a 20 amp breaker in my box.
Yeah. Does it have yellow wire going to it? Do you know?
I don't know.
It probably does. If you had, did you have someone come in and do that? Did you tell them you needed a
Yeah.
dedicated 20 and that's what they did? Okay. So all they did, can you see the screen? I don't know if, can
Yep.
you see my cursor moving? Okay. So if
No.
you have two of the one on the left, the NEMA 515s, that is a standard configuration for a 20 amp dedicated. If you call an electrician and say, this is what I need, they can put a dual gang 15 NEMA 515 outlet in there. That is, but it still has 20 amp or 12 gauge wire going to it, and it still has a 20 amp breaker. So if he
Okay.
was I don't think that you have insufficient power there. You see what I mean?
Okay.
But you're
Yep.
still going to be drawing closer to 20 amps, not 15. You're still all right. But like Jim said, in that configuration, you don't want to run anything else on it. But are you saying the cord that you have looks like this one on the right, the NEMA 520 that has the T slot in it?
No, the cord that's on the machine right now is the standard,
Is
like the
standard.
15.
Right. But what
Yeah, which is
I'm
why
asking is
when
the
I saw
cord
the the
hang on
cord
a
is
second.
the cord is a 12 AGW.
Okay. Well, does it say what the connections are on it? Does it say NEMA 520? Or does it say? Do you have the cord? Did you buy it?
I didn't. No, I'm talking about the cord that's coming from the machine.
Okay. Well, I know it's a 15 amp.
Okay.
You're saying that you need to use an extension cord for it, right?
Well, yeah, if that's
Okay.
if that's doable, yes.
It is. Here's the only thing we need to remember is you're on the right track going with a 12 gauge cord because that's what you
Okay.
need. It would be really easy for you to go buy an 18 gauge at Home Depot in the lawn and garden section, one of those little orange ones, and
Right.
it would fit, but it would burn up after a while. So yes, you're on the right track. You want a 12 gauge. See, that's the reason we make you get a plug like this now,
Right.
because
So
and then that. Mhm.
right, that was my dilemma, was that it appeared as if all the 20 amp cords had that had that T slot type receptacle and plug on it.
Mhm.
So
I don't know if you'll find a 12 gauge cord that has NEMA 515 plugs and sockets on it, because I don't even know if that's a thing, because they don't need 12 gauge on 15 amp cords. You see what I mean? You
yeah.
may have to exchange those one of those outlets for one of these. In your instance, provided you have a 20 amp breaker and it's dedicated and it's got that 12 gauge wire going to it, you can swap out one of those outlets for one of those 520s so that the cord will plug in a 20 amp cord. You see what I mean?
Right. But now still I have the male end coming from the machine into the female end of the cord,
Well,
right?
if you'll
So
look at this T slot, that will take the one that comes on your machine or the one that's sideways. That's why it's a T. You'll be able to plug either one of them in there. You see what I'm saying?
I do, but how do I plug the machine into the cord? You know what I'm saying? If the female end on the extension cord doesn't match the cord on
It
my
will
machine.
match.
Oh, it will. Okay. I thought it had to have the T slot.
No.
Okay.
The T doesn't mean that the entire piece of the T is going to be sticking out. You have that T because there's two blades. There's a blade that's parallel to the other smaller blade beside it, and then there's another one that is perpendicular to that smaller one beside it, not both. You see what I mean? So this plug is made to handle a 15 amp outlet, or this outlet is made to handle a 15 amp plug by using this way, right? Or a 20 amp by using this way, which you can't see my mouse moving, I guess, but
right. But I get it. The horizontal is for the 20 amp.
For the 20, but you can still plug a 15 amp outlet into this 20 amp or 15 amp plug into. Yeah, I'm getting myself confused, but it should fit. If it looks like this, the cord that is on your machine now should plug into this. What you need to do is get your outlet to have the T slot again, that's provided that it really technically is a 20 amp circuit, which it sounds like it is. The electrician would have known enough to, to make sure that put 12 gauge wire in there. So I think that would be the solution.
Okay. Yeah,
And
I
then
had
you can
him.
buy the 20 gauge. You can buy the 20 amp rated cord, and it will fit. And then you can just plug your machine in.
And
Okay.
the thing is, too, you want to go with the shortest extension cord as necessary.
Right, and that was the other thing. It seems like they're all 50 feet long.
Yeah,
They
12
make some
12 space.
appliance cords that are 6 and 8 and 12. They're classified as appliance extension cords, and
Uh-huh.
they have 20 amp ones, and they're way less expensive than those yellow jackets too.
Yeah, those yellow jackets are like $80, $100.
They are.
All right, so most important is I had to have a minimum 12 gauge, right? Or, yeah, minimum 12
Yes.
gauge? Okay.
And
All right.
however you can get those to plug together, the best, is fine. But I think you do technically have a dedicated 20. They just put two 15 amp outlets instead of one 20 amp outlet. So
Right.
you can switch
I had
one
this
of them and
installed.
just
I used to have
use the other.
I used to have a wood shop in my garage, and I had a guy come in. He put in a
Yeah.
220 outlet, and he put in this, this little gang box here that he attached to a 20 amp breaker. So,
Sure.
but the machine's been running fine. I haven't had any issues with it.
Mhm.
I wasn't sure if I got one of those cords, if I just, cut the female end of it, and took the length that I needed and rewired it, wired it into the machine.
That is an option too.
Okay.
The thing you're going to run into is finding an extension cord that'll plug into your existing socket, they're all going to probably be rated at 15 amp, but you need a 20. So your problem's going to be is finding the correct cord may not fit your wall.
Right.
Not so much that it won't fit the machine. So you see what I mean?
I do. I'm just trying to avoid having to move the receptacle. That's something I definitely don't want to do.
Well, not move it, just replace it with.
Right. Well, I need that extra length too, because where I want to put my machine is too far right now to reach. That's why I'm in this whole dilemma here. So
here's another option Here's another option you could actually do too, is if you go external with your wiring, you can actually move the outlet very easily by capping that off, using the outlet as a junction box, using hard conduit pipe running on the outside of the wall, and then putting your secondary outlet in. If it's all 12 gauge and it's all factual.
Right. Okay, I hadn't even thought of that. That's not a bad idea either. I can handle it. The mechanics of it. The electricity just scares the crap out of me. So
here's the deal: you can use an extension cord if you want to.
Right.
And that's totally fine from your existing outlet, but you have to change your outlet.
Right.
So that a 20 amp extension cord will plug into it.
Gotcha. Okay. I think I can handle that. All right. Good to go. I know I've been away for a while. I didn't realize you guys were only doing every other week. So I tried logging in last week, and I was like, oh, damn, I got to wait a whole other week.
Well, we're still, it's, we're going through, we went.
That's all right. No worries. I got to keep up, man. I got to keep up.
Sure. It may change again. You never know. You never know what we're going to do. So,
cool.
And if you run into anything, shoot us a message. If it's, if you're over at Lowe's tomorrow and need to ask us a question, just shoot us a message real quick. We'll be glad to help.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Brian.
Sure. So, all right. Well, anybody else have anything?
For the record, Brian. For the record, Brian, I didn't start up the conversation that we should have meetings once a week. That wasn't me. But I concur with him.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. No, I'm not going to talk about it. I'll talk about it next.
Wow, did I miss something?
Session. No, you didn't miss anything. I'm still that the community wants to drive this webinar in the direction that it's going is great, even though it's not what it was originally purposed for. And that's what I've been throwing around in my head. I need to stop talking about it. I can't stop thinking about this webinar because I think there is something there. And if, I don't know.
I haven't been on Facebook. Obviously, there was something posted on Facebook because I haven't had time.
Oh, no, I don't think so. I haven't seen anything posted about it. But other than I went in there and quietly changed the pictures and stuff on the page so so that everything says biweekly instead of weekly. Um, but yeah, I don't know. We're evolving, so that's what we're doing.
Wasn't Viagra originally tested for something other than what it is made for now?
I think it probably was. Exactly. Well,
So things
hey,
evolve, Brian. I'm just trying to say things evolve. That's all.
you're right.
If the weekly meeting works, why are we going to every other week? But I'm just throwing it out there. That's all. And no,
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to sideswipe a Viagra commercial in here, but you know.
Oh no. So, and that's kind of the same way with that stuff on the back of the Post-it notes. I think that was supposed to be some high-tech adhesive that held airplanes together. And they spent all this money developing it, and it wouldn't stick anything together. And the guy was going to get fired, and he figured out that it would stick paper over and over again. And there's your Post-it notes. So yeah, evolution is a thing. So we'll just see where it
And
goes.
I'm pretty sure Viagra is now a cure for COVID-19 now.
It might
I read
be.
that the other day. Viagra.
Wow. So I guess that means you have to have COVID you can't have COVID for any longer than 4 hours. Otherwise you're going to have to see your physician.
No, the microscopic organisms get big enough where you can actually hunt them.
All right, bring the reins back in. We still got 19 minutes.
All right. So we had our intermission. Welcome back, everyone. We're talking about the art of the cut or any kind of issues or problems or topics that someone may have, and they're welcome to interject to do so.
I guess
got a question.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay.
Is there a way to turn off the autofocus?
Well, it's never really on. Those sensor arrays perform two functions. The first one is as the x-axis or z-axis minimum end stop. So that's the physical stop so that the head won't contact the bed and it prevents crashes. The other purpose is for autofocus, and it only autofocuses when you tell it to, either through Lightburn or through the controller. It's not automatic in the sense that it knows when you put in a piece of material and goes and searches for it. So, I mean, is that what? There's no on or off switch, I guess, is what I mean.
I built a L jig so that I could put something in there in the same exact spot every time.
Okay.
But it won't. But jig is thicker than the product.
I see.
So I can't bring it up high enough because it catches the jig catches before I get close to. I've got like a 1/4-inch jig and I'm using a 1/16 piece of material. Well, it won't get me close enough to the material. Just bringing the bed up, not trying to autofocus.
Right.
But you can lower the head down with that little brass knob.
Yeah.
That'll set your focus, and then Dave, you unplug the photo eye. That will eliminate any Z travel overprotection that can increase your risk of crashing, but that will let you raise to the moon till it runs into its hard travel limits.
Well, or
not necessarily the recommendation.
Just moving the material to the front where it's not in the path of the sensor.
If your bed's big enough.
If the bed's big enough.
You can also pre-focus before you put it in the jig or put the jig in there. Pre-autofocus the material, then put your jig in and set your material where you need it.
It'll let you lower.
Yeah.
Well, it'll let you lower it. It just won't let you raise it.
Yeah. So you're pre-raising, then you put the jig in, then you lower it to the height you need.
But then also be careful of where you have the head go after the job is done.
Yeah. Well, what thickness did you say the jig was?
It's 1/4-inch thick jig, and the material I was doing was 1/16.
All right, let me mute Jason. Here we go.
I set the origin so it won't go back over the jig, so it goes in the same spot. but I was,
Mhm.
and I wanted to make it a jig somewhat, I guess, semi-permanent into the honeycomb, so then I can, when I do this job, I can just set it in there and do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Honestly, you ought to just manually focus, not even worry about the autofocus. Just
well,
focus
and
it
that's
up till
what
it's.
I try to do
Uh-huh.
that. I just use the manual focus, or just use the manual, bring the bed up, and it will
No, you
stop.
just. Yeah, but you don't. You can manually focus with the knob, and bring the lens tube down instead of bringing the bed up.
Right.
Mike,
Okay.
Mike, I just sent you a private message with our article on manual focus.
Oh, we have an
Okay.
article. Oh, we do, don't we? I forgot about that. Thank you, Chris. But yeah, I think the manual focus would be and actually moving the nozzle, moving the lens assembly is the
Right.
quickest
Yep.
way. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
yeah. Quarter inch is about 6 millimeter, and that's what our focal distance is when you autofocus. So I can see how that might be alarming and have it out of focus because you even
Right.
have the chance of contacting it. With those kinds of tolerances, our heads
Right.
ride real close to the surface anyway, so
Okay.
that can be scary.
Okay. And what's the largest thing that I can do at the low on a 24 in a rotary?
The largest diameter thing,
Yeah.
Jason might be the best to answer that. He had a 24 or does, and
Which rotary do you have?
The low.
The low roller?
Yes.
Yeah, the biggest it's advertised for is up to a 30-ounce cup, but you can do larger things. But depending on what it is and how big it is, obviously will dictate that.
is that 30 ounce
I know.
assuming that
New.
the blades that it's sitting as fitted on the blade system, is that how that
Yeah,
works?
it's sitting on the blades. Sitting
Yeah.
on the blades, it's rated for sure up to a 30-ounce size object, cup, or anything
Okay.
otherwise that's that big. But you can get bigger things. It's just depending on what it is, like length also. So I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it, but yeah, I mean, I think it's 4 inches. I think
Yeah.
four and a
Somebody
half
wanted with
inches.
the
And
powder coated dog bowls done. And I think it's
well,
6.
now we have the junior and the Rotoboss that will fit in a 24 with the drop down brackets. I haven't tried the drop down brackets on a low roller.
Well, I'd love to give it a try.
Theoretically it should work. You'll just be suspending it by 2 points instead of 4.
Right.
But I mean, once it's locked in there and on the blades, I mean, it's not gonna go anywhere. So I mean, in theory, it should work. And I actually got my 24 set up with a low roller, and I can actually probably play around with that and see if that'll work. Like I said, I don't see why it wouldn't. And then that way you can actually drop it really low into the machine and get much more distance out of it.
Well, I would definitely like to try that.
Okay. If you can send an email to support@rotaryattachments.com. And then when I get in tomorrow, I'll take a look at it and I'll put a little test together and see how it works. And if it functions
Okay.
properly, then we can go from there. I've never tried it, but like I said, in theory, it should work just fine. But definitely have to look into it first before I give you a definitive answer.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yep.
That's all I got.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.
Right. Well, if anybody else has anything, let me know. We got about 10 more minutes. We can squeeze out the cut topic a little bit longer.
I got a question.
Oh,
Yeah, absolutely.
On the material library on I got an over 80 watt
mute
machine.
Jason again.
No,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jim.
Okay. The library that comes or you can load into your laser for the recommended cutting distance is based on a 2-inch lens, correct?
The
The stock
the
lens, the
the
cut
Yeah.
distance.
library.
Yeah. Is there some formula or calculation you can do if you're using a 4-inch lens or some other type of distance lens?
Oh, well, the PDF that's published has some. It's a small list, but they have a little bit of
Yeah.
information on some 4-inch stuff. Um, there probably is some math that can be done to get you in the ballpark. Is there anything set up for that I know of? No. Um, Chris's may have some intel that I don't. Um, I had seen a conversion tool once, but I don't know that it did focal. I don't know that it did lens. You know, the one that'll do different powers, and it'll uh, the one for the Galvo stuff, where it'll take the EasyCAD pins and turn them into materials libraries. And I think would it do different CO2 wattages? Did it have a lens thing in there? Because he's been putting a lot of stuff in it. Have y'all seen it? Even
I don't know. I'm still on EasyCAD for my fiber.
do you
Haven't
like
used
that
it yet.
EasyCAD? You haven't used it yet?
Yeah, I've not used it yet. That was me, Brian, not Jim.
What? Not used what yet?
Lightburn and that converter tool.
Oh,
That,
that's right, because you're stuck on EasyCAD.
yeah,
Oh,
rub it in. Rub it in.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Jim, there's not a real easy answer on that.
And
Chris
there's a
with
lot of
the
there's a lot of factors that come into the 4-inch lens and thickness and stuff. So
yeah,
it's not
well,
going
the
to be a
focal.
straight conversion, I don't think.
Well, I mean, you could say
Okay.
that you could calculate the beam density differences, you know. But yeah, everything else is a little bit different. It'll depend on where you're focusing with it and all that stuff. Um, that might be kind of that would be hard to put any hard numbers in. I'll put it that way. We always say that all of our libraries are just kind of stabs in the dark
Yeah.
anyway, just to kind of get you in the ballpark. That goes exponentially higher when you go into talking about other lenses.
Well, if you go to like the 1.5-inch lens from the other people, how far difference between 2 inches and a half, 1.5 inches is, you know, some ballpark. I don't need the exact numbers or exact library, but
Yeah.
a
Well, I mean, if
rough
you're going
estimate
from a
to
2-inch to a 1-inch, I would say
one and a
drop
half.
the power a little bit or raise the speed up just a little,
Okay.
and by a little, I don't know, 5%, something like that. But yeah, that'll be something that you probably just kind of get the feel for, really. The material test file may help as well. Running the matrix between all the different speeds and powers and seeing which one performs the best. That is typically the best way to get
Okay.
to get something to stick, pretty quick instead of wasting a lot of material. Is using one of the
Okay.
material test files on it. That might be, and then you could mark on those. Here's one I did on the 2-inch, and here's one I did on the 4, and here's one I did on the 1.5 inch, and you can actually visibly see the differences between them in the tests, since the test will
Because
remain constant.
I'm very reluctant to change. I got a 4-inch and I got 1.5 inch. I'm reluctant to swap them out. Figure it's so much trouble to try to do something else. I don't use it that much, so
Yeah.
I try to be simple.
Oh
Okay,
yeah,
The
I'll
only
and
thing
get
back.
with. I'll play around a little bit.
we all waited. I guess the only thing that I would say, and I tell everybody that I train this, is don't be afraid of the machine and don't be afraid of messing around. That's the only way you're going to learn the ins and outs of the lenses, the speeds, the powers. Get crappy material that you don't need anymore, and just burn the crap out of it. that's really going to be the best way to learn, and that's kind of why or how a lot of us got to the point that we're at.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. If you go, as we said in the beginning, if you go down in focal distance, the power's inherently going up just because it's concentrating it so much in one location. So you could just assume that as you go up and, to a 4-inch lens, you may need a little bit more power. Yeah,
or slow down
I guess that's
a little.
or slow down.
And the focus will matter a lot more at the smaller lenses also. And you got to think about, how much smoke is generated and all that stuff. There's a lot of things that'll be different across those lenses. So even how dirty they get, I would think that something that you cut with the 4-inch has the potential to be dirtier, have more particulates on it or residue than would something that you cut with a 2, even though typically we're exhausting it through the kerf and out the bottom, and it doesn't make a huge mess anyway. But you're making a lot more material. You're burning a lot more material with a 4-inch.
Okay. And I got just a side note there on the fire alarm system on the Nova. It comes in handy when you're a type of person who likes to look at fire. Because I was cutting acrylic and just had a paper backing on it. It's flaming up and said, "Oh, okay, that's what a flame looks like." And I let it go, and then finally rings all the bells and whistles off.
Yeah, it did its thing.
It works.
So
yeah, but I'm the type of person who says, "Oh, that's pretty."
Yeah, well, the lens won't think so. So make sure you mitigate that pretty soon, or otherwise you might have an issue. But yeah, then that flaring up under the acrylic does look wild.
Yeah,
it's almost like fireworks going off under there.
And my brain kept on thinking, it's just a thin coat of paper. It's just a thin coat of paper.
Mm-hmm.
And it caught on fire, I guess.
It happens. Yeah, man, no problem. All right. Well, anybody got a question for the last 3 minutes or a comment or?
I got one. It's unrelated to cutting. Has anybody ever tried marking spray photo engraves?
Yeah.
I tried it the other week. It didn't turn out too bad. Didn't look good while I was engraving, but once I cleaned it up with some LA Awesome, it was pretty good.
Hard to hold all the details when you're trying to bond something like that.
But it did all right. It was on a metal plate, so it was one of those where you didn't invert it this time because I was burning the black to the metal versus burning the paint off the metal. But it came out pretty good. But that stuff's expensive.
Was that on the Nova or the Odin?
It was on a Nova. This was testing for somebody who was interested in a 100-watt Nova 51. So did that there.
Gotcha. Well, it's close enough. I'm going to kill the thing. Hang on a minute here. Recording in progress. Let's hit a button.